For a lot of European fans, the hardest part of this World Cup wasn't the football. It was the flight home. Across social media, tourists who landed back in their own countries have been posting something nobody quite expected. Not relief. Not excited to be home. Tears. Genuine, on-camera emotion about missing a country they'd only just left. Plenty of them had arrived a few weeks earlier expecting to feel nothing for it all. Most of these fans didn't travel to America expecting a life-changing experience. They traveled for football, plain and simple, treating the country itself as a backdrop rather than the point of the trip. Some carried real hesitation about the visit, shaped by years of headlines back home. A colder, less welcoming culture. A country better known, in their minds, for its problems than its people. A few admitted, before ever boarding their flights, that friends and family had tried to talk them out of the trip entirely, worried about crime stories they'd seen shared online. Nobody boarded that outbound flight expecting to cry on the way home. It built slowly, the way these things usually do. Free bread at a table nobody ordered it for. Bottomless soda refills that never came with a raised eyebrow. Strangers who struck up conversations for no reason and meant it when they asked how your day was going. Grocery runs turned into their own kind of moment too. Visitors wandering down aisles that seemed to stretch on forever, filming the sheer range of everyday products stacked on a single set of shelves, treating an ordinary errand like something worth documenting. None of it was dramatic on its own, but stacked day after day, across an entire trip, these small moments started to reshape how visitors felt about the place they were standing in, long before any of them thought to notice it happening. Somewhere around match day, for a lot of fans, the shift became impossible to ignore. Stadiums packed with strangers from a dozen countries. Tailgate parking lots turned into open, informal celebrations, food shared freely with people who'd met only hours earlier. Fans who arrived guarded found themselves fully swept into something they hadn't planned for, an atmosphere that felt less like a business trip through a foreign country and more like being folded, briefly, into a community they didn't know they wanted to be part of. One visitor described sitting with a family they'd just met in a stadium parking lot as one of the best parts of the entire trip, and the match itself hadn't even started yet. Before we get to the actual goodbyes, the moment this trend really turned emotional. If you're finding this interesting, go ahead and subscribe, because we're tracking every viral World Cup reaction all the way through the final. Drop a comment and guess. What do you think made these tourists take it the hardest? Let's find out together. For a noticeable number of these visitors, packing to leave started feeling heavier than it should have. Some pushed back their flights just to catch one more match, one more city, one more stretch of ordinary American life that hadn't been on the original plan. Others admitted, plainly, that folding a suitcase for the trip home felt worse than they expected, a strange thing to say about a country a lot of them had arrived treating as an obligation attached to a football schedule rather than somewhere they'd actually miss. Then came the actual goodbyes, and for some fans, those goodbyes hit harder than anything that happened at the stadium. Clips have circulated of visitors breaking down at departure gates, saying goodbye to people they'd only known for a matter of days, sometimes hours. Others posted from their own living rooms once they'd landed back home, admitting through tears that they missed a country more than they'd missed anywhere else they'd ever traveled to, and that they hadn't expected to feel this way at all. For a few, the emotion caught them off guard days later, not right at the airport, but back at work or back in their normal routine, when the contrast between the ordinary rhythm of home and the warmth of the trip finally settled in. One visitor described scrolling through their own photos a week after landing and being surprised by how quickly the tears came back. None of these tourists needed an argument to feel this way. They needed a free refill, a shared plate of food in a stadium parking lot, and a handful of strangers who treated them like they mattered, stacked together often enough to outweigh years of secondhand assumptions. That is the part that makes this trend different from ordinary post-vacation blues. This wasn't sadness about a holiday ending. It was grief over leaving behind a version of a country that plenty of these visitors never expected to find in the first place, and a version of themselves, more open and more surprised, that they weren't quite ready to leave behind either. It's worth asking why so many visitors arrived expecting so little, when so many of them left feeling this much. Part of the answer is simply what travels fastest online: A dramatic headline about crime or division spreads further and faster than an ordinary story about a stranger's kindness or a stadium full of warmth. Over years, that imbalance builds an entire, lopsided picture of a country, one that only seems to correct itself once enough people go and check it for themselves, in person, all at once. None of this means the concerns these fans carried were made up out of nothing. It means the picture they'd been given was incomplete, missing the ordinary decency that ended up defining most of their actual trip. And once enough visitors compared notes and realized they weren't alone in feeling this way, the whole reaction stopped looking like coincidence and started looking like a genuine, shared experience. On the other side of these videos, something equally genuine started happening. Ordinary Americans began replying to these clips, often moved themselves by watching a stranger from another country get emotional about their home. Comment sections filled with locals inviting visitors to come back, offering recommendations for next time, or simply saying how much it meant to see their own everyday surroundings through someone else's eyes. What started as a one-directional wave of visitor emotion slowly turned into something closer to a conversation, with both sides expressing a kind of surprised gratitude toward each other that neither had expected going into this tournament. That back and forth became its own small story running alongside the football itself, a reminder that the connection built during these weeks went both ways, even after the visitors had already flown home. For thousands of European fans, this tournament didn't just end with a final whistle. It ended with a harder goodbye than most of them expected to give, to a country a lot of them had arrived not expecting to feel anything for it all. If this one got to you, subscribe, because we're tracking every one of these viral reactions all the way through the final. Drop a comment and tell me if you've ever felt homesick for a place you only just left. See you in the next one.